English translation, 71st contact. Monday, 10th of January, 1977, 0214. H's thought transmission contact.
During the course of our conversation on the 6th of January, at our last contact, you asked me about various future matters, which I answered only poorly for you. This occurred as I was not, or not yet, informed about what and how much of the coming events of the Earth year 1977, as well as the subsequent decades and the third millennium, can be publicly revealed to the humans of the Earth. In this respect, I consulted with Quetzal, who gave me the exact values, so I may now in this way provide further details to you. With this, it is to be understood that my information is partly on a prophetic basis and is partly recorded in the program of our probability calculations and foresights. Now listen to the values, which are of unfortunate hardship, worse than all the years before, and which you should quote according to Numbers: 1. Severest earthquakes, worse in their extent than anything since 900 years before, will shake the earth from 1977 till far into the future and far into the third millennium and change the surface of the planet and its climate. The number of dead will be much higher than in the last 50 years up to 1976. Due to undersea volcanoes, new islands will be formed, whereby our analysis reveals that the first island of this type will emerge near Japan. Existing islands and small parts of the mainland will sink several centimeters in the floods of the oceans, or get pushed up several centimeters, while on the mainland smaller and larger shifts of land will occur. In 1977, all those countries that were already shaken by quakes in 1976 are particularly vulnerable to earthquakes. Becoming noticeable this year is also the great fault from San Francisco to Alaska, as well as areas in Austria, in Switzerland, and Germany, which will be affected by various quakes. Then also, in this year, the African continent and island nations in Oceania will be shaken by quakes, as also Russia, etc. Too, several volcanoes around the globe, during the coming decades, will spew out red-hot earth in sudden and unexpected eruptions and destroy many thousands of human lives. The beginning of these coming events will already take place within the next few days, when several thousand people on the African continent will be eliminated by a severe volcanic eruption in the nation of Zaire. 3. At the beginning of the year 1977, snowfalls will rise to exceptionally high levels and claim many victims. Even large areas, which otherwise have no snowfall, will be covered by great snow masses and be in distress, by which enormous temperature drops will lead to very many deaths from exposure in many nations, not only in nations used to snow, but also in areas not used to snow and cold. Due to the unusual heavy snowfalls, beginning already tomorrow, many nations around the earth will be affected, and it will claim uncountable victims, which will also be the case to an unusual extent in the coming decades and into the next millennium. Smaller and larger villages will be cut off from the outside world, and even air travel routes of entire nations will need to be temporarily discontinued. The end of the snowfalls and sudden falls in temperature climate brings minor and major catastrophes, because in the entire world avalanches will follow, which will bring much suffering and distress to the humans of the earth. In addition to many human and animal victims, large areas of landscape will also be affected when they will be destroyed by falling avalanches, along with roads, railway lines, and buildings of the humans. 4. In the course of the coming decades and far into the third millennium, tremendous snowfalls all over the world will lead to very bad seasonal summers for many countries, for great droughts will occur and destroy seed and harvest. Thus, however, also enormous storms and thunderstorms will cause havoc and damage worldwide, whereby also the whole of Europe will not be spared, not from huge floods either. 5. Due to the coming drought periods until well into the third millennium, unusually large land and forest areas throughout the world will be destroyed by wildfire, and to a great extent, especially around the time of the changing millennium. 6. When in some places, due to drought, need and misery reigns, many countries in Europe, Asia, and other parts of the world will be flooded by mighty waters, claiming victims, both human and animal, and destroying much of the land and man-made things. Also, storm surges will roll across the oceans, breaking onto islands and mainlands and claiming their deadly tribute. 7. The world's shipping will be cruelly hurt by oil catastrophes, as well as by shipwrecks of all kinds, and claim many victims. Whole series of shipping catastrophes will occur and cost mankind sums in the range of thousands of millions. Especially the oil transport shipping is in the year 1977 until far into the third millennium seriously endangered by technical failures, etc. of the transport vessels, as well as by natural forces, which rebel against humans' exploitation of Earth's petroleum, the interrelations of which the human of the Earth, however, is not able to understand and grasp, well, not even knowing them or not accepting them. But the Earth is now ablaze in rage and defends itself, by which it again removes the deprived matter from the human beings, and in so doing, pollutes and destroys those areas, which are very important factors for humans' continued existence, also for the nourishment, namely, the oceans. The powers of nature, defending itself, have declared war against the human beings and hit them hardest where their pulse of life beats. Namely, when this is destroyed, then no living creature will be able to exist anymore on the earth. Due to tanker catastrophes, large quantities of oil are to be set free, which swim as mighty and all-destroying carpets on the water, contaminate the water, kill life forms, and finally sink as a deadly and many years lasting slick to the seabed and cover the shores underneath with a tough deadly mass and destroy them. So the powers of nature defend themselves against the insanity of the human being of the earth, in order to destroy him or her. For when the human disappears from the earth's surface, only then will earth be able to regenerate itself, which then, however, may take thousands of millions of years and may put it back to its primal state. But as this does not need to happen, the human being still has a small chance if he or she rapidly discontinues all exploitation and thus does not exploit the earth any further in the current manner. But this means that an immediate stop of all exploitation must be worked out and implemented, and at the same time a worldwide strict birth control and a minimum 7-year birth stop is enforced. There is still time for the human of the earth to save himself or herself, but the time for doing so has become very scarce, for no more than 400 or 500 years remain, to save himself or herself and to align with the laws and recommendations of nature. He or she needs, therefore, in the course of this time to become rational and to learn how to handle everything, so that there will be no regress but an intentional progress. 8. The year 1977 and all the times of the upcoming decades until well into the third millennium will bring a great deal of suffering through warfare for the human of the earth. The abuses of the terrorists, anarchists, neo-Nazis, and all extremist trends as well as power-addicted ones will also rise sharply and encroach upon new means for murdering, by which many humans will die an evil death. The main causes of this are the Second World War concern in relation to the persecution of the Jews and the hatred against Jews, as well as the nation of Israel, created after the war, and the nations sympathetic with it. All those who are not cooperative with Israel and seek their satisfaction in the related hatred of race, foreigners, as well as those of other beliefs, carry the blame in regard to the coming and senseless shedding of blood. Already, in the northeast of the Middle East, The concept of a worldwide swell of a pummeling war at the Persian Gulf threatens, stirred up by the plottings of a mad and power-hungry Iraqi who will become head of state in 1979. The day is no longer distant when the concept becomes a reality and a worldwide multinational combat troop comes into play when the destructive war breaks out, which already glimmers in the basic thoughts of the upcoming ruler. This evil, threatening event can only be prevented if the nations of the earth agree with each other and in unity dissolve the evil machinations of the upcoming head of state at their very foundation. Thereafter, all borders of all neighboring nations shall be opened, and a united government for the entire territory is formed over there and takes up its function. This alone guarantees to achieve the long-sought true peace in that territory, and to also maintain it, whereby, however, one must principally explain that a united government must not be formed and applied in a dictatorial manner, but in a form of leading the folk. 9. The year 1977 will basically be a year of murder, at the grand as well as the small level. No country on the earth will be spared, because many places will experience quite evil massacres which will break out and claim countless humans as victims. Switzerland, too, will not be spared, even in other forms and to a lesser degree. Murders and other killings of hatred, despair and revenge, etc. will rapidly increase in number, as well as murders in a purely criminal and sectarian form, which will also spread to the later decades. Entire families, especially in the coming time period and beyond the turn of the millennium, will fall victim to the bloodthirstiness of the most various elements, whereby spouses will kill each other, as well as many parents will kill their children. Trivialities will appear as justification for the bloodshed, and the murdering elements will even feel that they are in the right. The judging bailiffs will be overburdened with all these coming events, and in their irrational naivety, they will grant these murderous elements all kinds of extenuating circumstances, concessions, and in doing so will promote the continuation of the series of murders. 10. The year 1977 brings to scientists of all branches a great many new discoveries, which, well applied, could bring the human beings of the earth a lot of positive progress, which, however, following the old pattern, are converted into negative values, bringing the humans death and destruction. In the medical science, unimagined discoveries are made and great successes recorded, but also in astronomy, chemistry, physics, and technology, which in its entirety will continue during all the coming decades until far into the third millennium, that starts on 1.1. 2001, which will unfortunately be contested by misguided persons because they want to choose the last year of the 20th century, so thus the year 2000 as the beginning of the third millennium. 11. During the year 1977, the scientists of one nation develop an extremely dangerous and deadly weapon, namely the neutron bomb, by which the respective nation will win the greatest power. 12. During the third millennium, several dangers from space are threatening, which, however, I am not allowed to describe any further. 13. From the next decade onward, several new and so far unknown to the human diseases will appear, which have partly originated in Africa and from monkeys, however also from the unintellect and the incredibility that all sorts of dead and sick animals and even human extremities are processed into meat, which is then fed to both carnivorous and vegetarian animals, which ingest the pathogens contained in the meat, as also the human, when he or she consumes the meat of these then slaughtered animals as food afterwards. 14. Air travel will suffer an unusually high amount of damage and will claim many victims, indeed also in the coming decades. These are the most important predictions for the year 1977 and for the coming decades, as well as for a longer period of the third millennium, in part based on probability calculations and on forecasts, as well as in a small part on prophetic statements. To explain more about it officially, I am not permitted, so I have to leave it here with only this. Use the statements in a good manner and make them according to the necessity known to the governments of the earth as well.